February reading wrap up. Let's do this. Ow, I just hit myself with the books. Let me take you through all the books that I read in February, full of ghouls and goblins, and then there were some spiders. Hello, if you're new here, I'm Sinead. Welcome to my Spooky Booktube channel, where I discuss spooky books, spooky films, spooky things in general, and if you want to, anything that really messed us up as kids. I'm going to take you through all of the books that I read in February. These are hard copies, these are audios, and Kindles. I'm going to share my honest thoughts and my take on the books. I may have different views on it that work based on my preferences, but I'll always try and find something good in the books. And so that my arm doesn't get tired, I'll also put the covers of the book up here on the screens like this. No one's told me not to do that yet, so I'm going to continue. I also have this drink, which isn't alcohol. February was a weirdly very good reading month for me. I normally read about 4 books a month, but this month I managed 8. I'm lying. I managed 7, but there was a book that I forgot to include in my January wrap-up that I'm going to throw in here, because it'll be a quick one. But yeah, it was decent. I'm not really one for reading goals or saying I have to have read this many. I think it can get very competitive. However, when I do have a good month, by God, will everyone know about it. Now, the book that snuck into February that I actually finished in January was Mr. Magic. This book is about a kids' TV show that 30 years ago mysteriously had to end because of an incident on set. And the surviving child actors who appeared on the show have reconnected, and they have been called together to do a documentary about what happened on set, and maybe they'll be able to find some answers from their mysterious past. I won't go massively into the plot of this book because this book wasn't for me. It did not work. It is around a 2-star for me. I think there was a good story in there, but it was hidden amongst a very complicated, I would say overly complicated plot, and the characters weren't really realistic. And I know you're supposed to suspend your disbelief in horror, of course you are. It's really hard to sort of go like, well, characters shouldn't do that. No one should do anything in any of the horror books that we read, because otherwise there would be no plot. In this one in particular, there were just little mishaps with the characterization to move the plot along, and it just meant that I couldn't connect with them. Apologies if you like the book, it's just my opinion, it just didn't work for me. So after that, into February proper, I started the month with Incidents Around the House. I have done an entirely separate review video on this channel for Incidents Around the House. So if you're interested in a deeper dive without spoilers, but also with optional spoilers, you can go check that out. This is a very hyped horror. It's been on a lot of people's lists as one of the scariest books of last year and the scariest book for a long time. I think this book works. It's about a 4-star for me. If you don't already know, the book is told from the perspective of an 8-year-old girl. She lives at home with mummy and daddo. Everything seems fine except that she has other mummy living in her closet. And each night other mummy comes out and asks her, "Can I go into your heart?" The book is all about this haunting of this child, the other mummy being present in the house, and also the struggles that her parents are going through with each other in their relationship, and also understanding what is happening to their child. And as the horrors increase in the house, so does the peril that they all face. The horrors in this book, I think, are delivered very well. Other Mummy is genuinely frightening. It is both insidious and it's also large in scale. So you have that combination of big, jaw-dropping, terrifying scares and just that creeping dread all the way through of what is going to happen next. The characterization through this book, particularly with the other adults, is a little bit cliched, it's a bit broad, but I didn't mind that really at all in a book that delivered on its horror promises. Incidents Around the House, very good on audio too. Next up, something slightly different, I delved into historical fiction for my book club, and this book, A Poisoner's Tale by Catherine Kemp, was high on our list of reads because this is a fictionalized account of the legendary story of Giulia Tofana and Aqua Tofana. For those who don't know, Giulia Tofana was allegedly a woman who grew up in Sicily. She was the daughter of an apothecary. I have real trouble saying that word. An apothecary who also wielded poisons, who also taught her the fine art of poisoning. Giulia grows up in Sicily. She would later move to Italy and into Rome, where the Catholic Church is. And she ended up working with a band of women in secret to create this poison that was known as Aqua Tofana. This poison would be handed out on a very, very strict, secretive basis to women who were stuck in abusive marriages. This was, at the time, the only way most women could escape their marriages. Giulia's story has since passed into legend. It's fascinating. I would urge people to look her up if you haven't already. And A Poisoner's Tale is a really good historical novel that tells her story. It is melodramatic, but it is beautiful and brutal in equal measure. Not only do you have the story of the poisoners and their craft, but Julia also has a second sight. There's some tarot in there. You've got really interesting, quite broad characters of the women who work with her. But also you have the perspective of the church. Very randomly, you have Pope Alessandro, real person, who is writing letters in the middle of the book. It was a very challenging story, but it is entertaining. I think it delivers. A Poisoner's Tale was a 4-star for me. It wasn't a 5-star because I did feel some of the prose, while very lyrical and beautiful, there was a lot of explaining of feelings, and it's not my favourite writing style. Enough of such poisony ways. For my next read, I decided that I needed to complete reading all of the novels by Rachel Harrison. Rachel Harrison is one of my favourite horror writers. I discovered her a couple of years ago and I've now read all of her novels. The only one that I've got remaining is Bad Dolls, her collection of short stories, which is over there on my shelf. She has written Such Sharp Teeth, a werewolf story, which is possibly my favourite. Cackle, people describe it as Gilmore Girls with witchcraft. So Thirsty, which is about vampires. Black Sheep, read that and discover it for yourself. I don't want to give anything away, it's great. Her first book, though, was The Return. You have 4 female friends who've known each other all their lives. One of the friends, who was recently married, goes missing one day. She disappears on a walk in the woods and she is gone for 2 years. And all of her friends are worried, they're panicking, eventually come to terms with the fact that she must have passed. Then she comes back. The friend returns. And she is changed. She's not quite the same. She has interesting quirks and things about her. And the girls will discover just how weird she is when they decide to take a girls' trip to a beautiful new luxury resort out in the beautiful countryside. And shit goes down. The Return does feel like Rachel Harrison's first book. It is fine. It was a good story. I really liked some of the horror elements in it. I liked the way the story developed. Its execution was a little clunky for me, a bit convoluted, a little bit confused, a bit mashed together, sort of almost rushed, and maybe that is the mark of a first novel. The Return ends up probably being a 3-star read for me. It's very hard for me not to be overly generous because it's Rachel Harrison and I so love her other books, but looking at it in isolation, I enjoyed the storyline. I thought it was strong. It just did get convoluted. If you're new to Rachel Harrison, I'd suggest starting in one of her other books. And if you feel like it, you can also include that one and support the author. This is the point where I lean in real close to the microphone and ask you please to subscribe to my channel, save this video, share it, comment nicely, send it to people, send it to your enemies, send it to people at work, send it to someone without any context whatsoever, and then put, "Can I use your bath?" Now, I mentioned this one in my January wrap-up because I just started it. I finished reading This Cursed House by Del Sandine. This is the story of a young woman, Gemma, in 1960s America. She is a black woman and she finds she is offered a job at a huge southern mansion in New Orleans. She travels there, she meets the large family who live there, and she realises that she is connected to them through her past. And something tain't right with the house. And then they reveal there is a curse on the house and they need her help specifically. We learn quickly that Gemma, our heroine, can see spirits. There is something malevolent about the house, but is that malevolence external and everyone inside is innocent, or is that something they have wrought upon themselves? That is a very quick synopsis of that book. There is a lot going on in This Cursed House. Predominantly, I enjoyed it. Again, I think that the storyline, the plot of this book is really strong. It is fairly spooky. It's more unsettling because this is a book that deals with issues of racism and of colorism as well. Again, a book where I really liked the plot and there were moments of it of great description, and I was listening to it on audio and I felt transported to the place. I thought it was so evocative in places. There are very upsetting and uncomfortable scenes in the book, though it feels very kind of lush and lavish, but then in other places it dragged. There were times when there was a lot of repetition, there was a lot of drama building to nothing, and there was really a good dramatic story at the heart of it. I would round this up to a 4-star because I did really like the storyline. Then we hit another big boy in February. It's Witchcraft for Wayward Girls. by Grady Hendrix. Whoo! Long-awaited new book from this much-loved horror author. I am a fan of Grady Hendrix. I have read, I think now, all of his novels, and I've always enjoyed his writing style. I think he's incredibly creative. He's got a nice dry wit to him, as well as being very inventive and being able to deliver on the scares in many of his books. There's a bit of a lightness to his stories, even though some of them are really quite dark. And this one included. Witchcraft for Wayward Girls is set in a mother and baby home in 1970 in Florida. A mother and baby home is where teenage, unwed girls would be sent when they had fallen into the family way, however they had come by their circumstances, and they would be sent to these homes where they would be shut off from society. They would just stay there, give birth to their child. The child would be given away for adoption, and then they would go home as if nothing had ever happened. This is certainly the setup that we have for the home in Witchcraft for Wayward Girls. Into this house we have a young girl, Neva, whose name will be changed to Fern because no one's allowed to keep their identity when they're there. She is pregnant. She meets the rest of the girls in the household. It is a very boring, mundane existence. You are told what to do. You have to do chores. You're seen by a very cold, clinical, not very nice doctor who explains to you what you're going through because he knows your body far better than you do. And these girls are also facing the prospect of going into labor, and they really have no idea what is coming to them because they are not being told stuff. You're reading the book and going, oh wow, these girls are not prepped. Fern makes friends with several other girls and they form quite a tight-knit group. But during their time there, they discover witchcraft by way of a book that is given to them by a traveling librarian who has ulterior motives for wanting the girls to maybe dabble in the dark side. They see witchcraft as a potential tool to help them regain their agency in the house, to control and punish those who are being so mean to them, but also to protect each other. And things become much more serious when one of their youngest friends, a girl of mere 14, is being faced with the prospect of having to go back to a very unsafe home life after she has given birth, and the girls are compelled to try and find ways of saving her from that nightmare. Overall, thoughts on this book is I liked it. I think a lot of people would really enjoy it. It's not my favourite book of his. I had some thoughts and feelings walking away from it. In fact, I recorded a YouTube video of a whole review of the book after I'd finished reading it, and I've not released it yet because I've then gone away and then just kept thinking about it in my head, gone, I don't know, because I was in such a sort of a flurry about how I felt about the book afterwards. It is a very powerful story that Grady Hendrix has told, and I appreciate that in the acknowledgements of the book at the end, he does credit all the women that he spoke to, all the research that he did to tell this story. Because many people have asked, okay, why is a white man telling the story of these teenage pregnant girls, describing what they go through, describing what women go through all the way through the book? I think it's done well. What worked for me in the book was the female friendships that are developed from the start of the book and the mundanity of them going into the home and all the chores they have to perform. And you really do feel for the girls all the way through it, because anyone, whether you have children or not, can see that they are not being given the right information, that they are being treated as infants, that they are so naive, and you really feel for them and your heart goes out to them of like, oh, I really, really want to save you from this. This book is far more about the girls and the home, and almost it reads like historical fiction, as opposed to being all about the witchcraft and all about spooky stuff. The witchcraft does take a bit of a back seat. It is very important to the story, and the witchcraft that they wield is dark and it is painful, and there are a lot of allusions you can draw and metaphors that can be made out of how painful real magic is to conjure, the price that you have to pay for it, and also the pressures and the price that women have to pay to exist. The toll that is taken on these girls' bodies as they are carrying children, the toll that magic demands as well. You know, that sort of duality in the book is very interesting. And I did appreciate how dark the witchcraft is in it. I said it over on my review on TikTok, but if you came into this book expecting it to be The Craft, I think you'd be disappointed. It's not glossy, fun, kooky with a little bit of danger to it. This is heavy stuff that you're dealing with. What stopped me loving the book is that I think it is too long. I think some people loved it. Some people wanted even more of it, having read other reviews and seen other reviews of the book. I do think it was a bit long and it dragged in sections, so it could have been trimmed down. I think that this mother and baby home, even though there's dreadful things that have happened to the girls there, and it's really heartbreaking, and their stories are done so well, this is a very sanitized version of a mother and baby home. Knowing the history of the mother and baby homes, particularly in Ireland, it's horrifying beyond belief. I mean, it's important that we never forget what happened to girls in these homes, that we don't forget the history of it and what was allowed to happen. You don't need to see that in really traumatic detail. So if this book does give people a glimpse into what mother and baby homes were like, without going into some of the darkest areas that certainly some homes did, then at least it carries on that story and shows the injustices that were served to women for a very long time, and what many women and generations now are still experiencing. For it to tell that story is a good cause, and it is a good story to share, even though it is sad. For me, it lands between historical fiction and horror. And this was fine, this mixture. Grady Hendrix does such great horror that I feel like he could have even ramped up the horror and still kept that central story pure and important. That's just my feelings on the book, but I do think it is a very good book. I think it's a good one to read. I think Grady Hendrix fans will love it. I'd love to know what people think of this book and whether it is worth a separate deep dive if anyone wants the plot laid out in full, with spoilers and without. So after the sadness and a lot of the drama of Witchcraft, Wayward Girls, I read Homicide at the Haunted House. I just saw this book come up on TikTok. It is a short, little, cozy paranormal mystery, and yum, 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 yum. Mwah! This was adorable. It was so cute. Low stakes, easy read. Our heroine is moving away from her nasty ex-boyfriend. Oh, it's horrible, and she's not got much money and a dime to her name, and her car breaks down. You know the drill. She ends up in a place called Nightmare, Arizona. Wonderful. She stays there, she needs to get a job to raise some money, so she ends up working in a haunted house. And some of the people who work in the haunted house are a little bit quirky. But then a murder occurs. This just gives you, if you want an easy, cozy read, this was just lovely. It was funny and it was cute and the plot was solid. This is part of a series. I will be diving into that next time I need a nice snuggly book to curl up with that still has some spooks in it. This was available on Kindle Unlimited at the moment, so go, 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 go. And I closed out February with an 88-page novella that was absolutely a 5-star read, and I had my jaw on the floor for most of it. Crypt of the Moon Spider. I received a copy of this from Titan, the publishers, last year. I got it, they sent it to me as part of a pack of things they were sending out. It was very kind of them. And it sort of sat on my shelf for ages. Then closing out February, I was like, oh, a quick read. Yeah, I'll have this, I'll give this a go. What? This reminds me that I need to do a video on all the what the fuck reads that I've done, because this will be up there, but this one's worth it. Here's the premise. It's 1923, and a young woman, Veronica, is being taken to the Barrowfield home for the treatment of the melancholy. The thing is that the home is on the moon, but the moon in this book's universe is it has an atmosphere, you can breathe on it. It is covered in forests and lakes and caves, and it was the home of the moon spider, and the moon spider's silk, highly coveted, very precious. And the doctors at this asylum believe that the silk can be used to repair the brain from all of these dark spells and sadness. All of those pesky mental illnesses can be cured by the silk. This book feels in part like a fever dream. It feels like a piece of steampunk fiction, a commentary on asylums, and it turns into this bizarre horror that 100% works all the way through it. I so admire a short book that can convey so much in so few pages without delving into melodrama, without trying to over-explain what is happening. The characters all the way through this, the way some of them develop and the backstories of them, I really felt emotional. There is gore in this. I don't feel like it's over the top, but it's there. And if you don't like spiders, stay away from this book, because Crypt of the Moon Spider is part of a series as well. I will be checking out the rest of these books. I was blown away by this, and I'd love to know if anyone else has read it. I fear I have really built that book up, and people are going to read it and come back and go, what? What? So there you go, there's my rattle through all the books that I read in February. Short little reviews that I've given here. If anyone is interested in any of the books that I've mentioned, if you'd like a deeper dive into them, you can put it into the comments. I will consider it. I'm happy to start churning out more videos as often as I can to please your little dark mind. Scuttling like the moon spider into March, I have been listening to a new Gothic book, and guys, I'm not going to tell you what it is. It is delicious. Delicious. More Gothic content to come. Also, spring is on the way. It's going to be time for some folk horror soon. I have plenty of existing recommendations for that, but also some new books sitting on my shelf. So folk horror season is almost upon us. Get your flower crowns and your massive axes out. Please do subscribe to my channel if you want to continue to receive spooky book content and spooky material in general. Always happy to take suggestions of content you'd like to see from me, from anything of the bookshelves that you see from behind me, or just requests. I'll entertain a lot of ideas. If you want to, you can also follow me on TikTok and on Instagram, where I do different types of content, but I'll be bringing you more videos here very soon. Stay spooky, bye-bye.